Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Seth.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
And welcome to the new year, 2022. Is that?
That's right. Yeah, 2022.
2022.
2022.
There's a zero in there somewhere.
There's a zero in there somewhere.
This will be the closest we'll ever get to being in a year that has almost all twos.
That's right.
Because by the time 2222 happens, we'll be dead.
Our clones might still be making the podcast.
That's true. So this is our first podcast episode of the new year. This is our truly our second year. We did start in 2019, but we started in like December of 2019, so
yeah,
doesn't really count. I mean, it counts for us. So we thought since this was the beginning of the year and we really didn't do any like holiday special or any celebration of our 2-year anniversary. We thought we would do that today in this episode 109, because why not? We're all thinking about the year in retrospection, so we thought we would do a top 10 retro list, because there's not enough of those around that we thought we would do our own. And so we will be, later on in this episode, going over 2 different lists, because we like to be difficult, and they are not Zachary's and my list, because that would make sense. No. We're going to talk about top 10 retro consoles and top 10 retro PC games. In our
top 10 retro console games, not top 10 retro consoles.
Yes, retro games. And they're going to be our top 10, and they're our top 10 in the moment. So maybe if we did this again, we would do it differently.
That's right, but probably not.
No, I certainly would. Anyway, before we get started into that, let's talk about what we've recently been playing. So, Zach, what have you recently been playing?
Seth, recently I have been playing Xenocrisis. Xenocrisis came out in 2019. It was developed and published by Bitmap Bureau. It's a twin-stick shooter, very similar to Smash TV, but more inspired by the movie Aliens. In the game, you play as Space Marines. You have the choice between either a male or a female Space Marine, or you can play as both if it's 2 players, and you have to go through different levels of a facility, killing off aliens in each room you go into. And you also have to save people who have been taken captive by the aliens. The game was originally released in 2019 for the Sega Genesis, and ports were made to Windows, Linux, Dreamcast, Xbox One, PS4, PlayStation Vita, Switch, the Evercade, and the Neo Geo. I have been playing the Evercade version, which came on a cartridge with a copy of Tanglewood, which is the game I was also recently playing in a past episode. You can actually go to the Bitmap Bureau's website and pick up the game for Sega Genesis, like on a cartridge. You could get the Dreamcast copy on a disc. You can get the Neo Geo copy on one of those big honkin' Neo Geo cartridges. They have options if you are into that. But yeah, I've been playing it via the Evercade handheld.
That's fun. I think I've seen it played, or I've seen footage of it. It definitely harkens back to the Smash TV vibe.
Yes, it feels a lot like Smash TV, but not a lot more gory, because Smash TV is pretty gory, but a lot more like aliens themed. It's like alien gore.
Instead of just killing dudes.
Yeah, you're not just killing dudes, you're killing like monsters and like weird parasite things.
It seems like a game I would enjoy, since I like twin-stick shooters.
I think you would love Xenocrisis, personally.
Maybe I will pick it up on the Switch.
Anyway, Seth, what have you been recently playing?
I've been recently playing a game that came out on the Atari Lynx back in 1989.
Ooh.
It was developed by Epyx, EPYX, and the game is Chip's Challenge. I was not playing it on my Atari Lynx because I don't own one of those. I was in fact playing it on Steam, and it's available on Steam for free. They remastered it-ish.
They re-released it for sure.
They definitely released it. I don't know if they remastered it. You can play either the Atari Lynx version or the Windows version. The one I'm more familiar with is the Windows version, but if I play the Atari Lynx version, it's like playing a new game. It was released by a company called Niffler on Steam in 2015, and the first one is free. They also have Chips Challenge 2 and 3 available for nominal fees of like a couple bucks. If you would like to know a little bit about Chips Challenge, you have a straight down view of the field, as it were, and you control Chip, and you move around puzzles and mazes, and you have to collect chips, like computer chips. And you go through, you have to collect keys and open up locks and collect chips behind these locks, and you eventually get harder and harder puzzles where you need to collect like items, maybe like fire boots so you can step on campfires, or ice boots to step on ice, water flippers. I was gonna say water boots, but they're really just flippers. Like flippers to like swim in water, and there's these like gravity boots so you can walk on these arrows that will propel you so you won't get propelled. And there's 144 puzzles, and I got through 9, and then I decided I was done. Mostly because I got frustrated. The thing with Chips Challenge is if you die, you're immediately reset back to the beginning of the puzzle. So if you are very, very close to completing a very, very long puzzle and you die, too bad.
Yeah, Chips Challenge is a frustrating game.
It was one of those softwares that was installed by default by the Windows team on Windows computers back in the day. So like computers would have it just on it somewhere, which was great.
Yeah.
Because when I was in school, we would use the computer lab. And let me tell you what the computer lab had installed on it, Chips Challenge.
It's because there was a period of time when Microsoft computers came bundled with specifically the Microsoft Entertainment Pack and the Best of Microsoft Entertainment Pack.
Right.
Which was a software that contained a lot of games like Chips Challenge, like very simple, almost shovelware games.
Right. I would say though, like Chips Challenge is like compared to like Yoda Stories and stuff like that. Chips Challenge is a little bit of a step above.
Yeah, but you probably would have found it in the same pack as like Rodent's Revenge.
Oh yeah, Rodent's Revenge is great, and that the snake game.
Yes, yeah, or Ski Free, which is one of my favorites.
Rodent's Revenge is where you have to like push all those blocks to keep the cats away or crush the cats.
Yep.
They turn into cheese. Yeah, and then you eat them. God, we should do an entire episode on pre-installed Windows video games.
We could talk about Space Cadet Pinball, which was
which was shareware.
A lot of people don't know Space Cadet Pinball is just one board of an entire game that was sold in stores, but no one ever played that game because we all had the one board that was important.
That's right. And let me tell you, that and a shareware copy of Doom, and you have hours of entertainment. You don't have to, you could play pinball, then you play a little bit of Doom. You don't even have to buy the full retail games. You could just play those 2 games. You're good. Anyway, hopefully everyone who's listening's New Year was safe and happy, and you were able to ring in the New Year. Do you have any New Year tradition that you like to do?
Me?
Yeah. If I asked our listeners, it would be a while before they responded. But if you have a New Year's tradition and you want to tell us, send us an email.
Probably I'm gonna just sleep.
Oh, right. We usually watch The Twilight Zone, which is on 24/7.
I might do that too. I might watch The Twilight Zone.
This year, though, Queer Eye will be having a new season, so we're gonna watch that, and then we'll watch The Twilight Zone, and then at 11:55, we turn on Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's, unfortunately does not have Dick Clark nor Dick Clark's Robot. It is now hosted by Ryan Seacrest, and we watch Ryan Seacrest bring in the new year. I just like watching the ball drop on New York. I think they're in New York, not on New York. I do enjoy just watching that ball go down the shaft.
That's a tradition of mine is also to turn on Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year trademark and enjoy the celebrations. I don't know, the countdown always is very memorable for me to do the 10, 9, 8.
Speaking of a countdown, what a great segue into today's episode. This episode, we're going to be talking about our top 10 retro console video games and our top 10 retro PC video games that the Classic Gaming Brothers say these 20 games either defined us or we just can't live without. Mostly defined us. We do have some honorable mentions we want to mention. These guys did not make the list, but we do want to mention that they were important to us as people. I would say the first game on this honorable mention list, we're going to just go with the order that they were written and not in any order of
Yes, these are not in any specific order, yeah.
So the first, we actually talk about this game in one of our earlier episodes. You can look for, it's the Fevered Dreams episode. It's a really good episode where we talk about weird games that we really didn't realize they were a thing. And this game is Space Kids. We didn't put down a lot of notes in the honorable mention section, so I could just tell you Space Kids was a 90s Microprose game where you played as 2 spaceships, and I imagine that this game would be a lot of fun if you are high.
I think we brought this up when we were talking about Space Kids, but I think the thing that makes Space Kids most memorable for me is the fact that every version I've played of it has had non-functioning audio. The version we had, I remember the audio not working. And I also, the version that I found online also had the audio not working. So I'm not quite sure if the audio ever worked on Space Kids for anyone, but it makes the game so much more haunting when you watch this game without any audio.
Right, and I don't think the audio is anything that helps with the game. The game is mostly driven through the action. It's very like slapsticky kind of drama where these like kids are trying. There's like the moon's like a man and he's like sleeping
and then you have to try to pilot a ship into a house.
Well, you are a ship. No, the kids are in the ship.
Yes,
but the ship
you have to pilot the ship into a house where the window is a mouth, and then you get inside and there's an elephant and he chases you, and then a bug flies up the elephant's nose.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the ship is alive and also
the ship
carrying
has eyes.
The kids.
Yes.
Simultaneously, you are the ship, but you are not the ship. It's a trippy game.
It is. The next game on our honorable mentions list is Myst, which is certainly more grounded than Space Kids.
Yeah, Myst is a game.
Myst is also, though, a weird game. Myst you could also probably have a good time playing if you were some form of intoxicated.
That's true, but I think you would mostly spend it lost.
To be fair, I spend most of my time playing Myst lost anyway.
Myst is also a 90s adventure game, similar to Space Kids in that regard. And that's where the similarities end. Myst, you're a traveler, and you're on an island, and you have to, on this island, solve puzzles to figure out where you are, and then you discover some books that have people trapped in them, so then you have to solve puzzles to help these people get out of the books. Spoiler alert, most of the people in the books are bad. So there's the 2 brothers, Sirius and Achener, but their father, Arcturus, is a good guy.
So yeah, Myst did not make it to our list.
So the next series of games that's on our honorable mentions is the Diablo series. I really loved the Diablo 1 game. I just felt like there was so many moments in it that are just like embedded in our culture, at least my culture. My wife and I are both fans of Deckard Cain and are constantly quoting, "Stay a while and listen."
Stay a while and listen.
But I really enjoyed the first game, and that's why it's an honorable mention. Do you have any thoughts about?
I never really played Diablo, so I'm glad it's an honorable mention because I don't have any thoughts of it.
Why have you not played any of the original Diablo or Diablo 2, Diablo 3?
No, I haven't. We never owned them.
I had to own Diablo 1.
Yeah, well, I definitely never played it.
Maybe it was too scary for you.
It might have been too scary for me. One of these days, though.
I would 100% recommend at least playing through Diablo. Then you'll know the stay a while and listen. It's a great game. I didn't beat either of them, though. Or any of them.
After Diablo, one of the games that didn't make it to our top 10 list is the Vector Man games. Vector Man 1 and Vector Man 2 are 2 Sega Genesis games that I'm a big fan of. They are very hard games. In the game, you play as a garbage man?
Yeah, he's like a garbage robot.
Yes, and he's made up of balls, but he can easily adapt into different shapes and stuff, so he can like turn into a helicopter.
I really loved the physics in the game where you can shoot down to slow your descent.
Yes, yeah.
That's probably one of my favorite things in Vector Man. We also have Tailspin for the Sega Genesis as an honorable mention, which was a great little platforming game where you either play as Baloo or his sidekick, Kit.
I was going to say Mowgli, which is from the Jungle Book. I think my favorite thing about Tailspin in general, not just the game, is that Disney looked at the Jungle Book and was like, we need to turn this movie into something we can sell toys for. And so they took the story and made the animal characters into cargo pilots.
Yeah. Yeah,
Who have to
they run a
fight
shipping business.
Shere Khan, the air pirate.
No, Shere Khan's not the air pirate.
I thought he was an air pirate, Cap.
No, the fox guy is the pirate. Shere Khan is just like the guy who's trying to buy them. He's like
Yes.
the evil capitalist. He's like he's the Monopoly man. He's just rich.
Yeah, he's just a wealthy rich man in a suit.
Who's trying to buy them out. He's trying to constantly buy them out. But there is, what's the pirate name?
Don Carnage?
Don Carnage.
Don Carnage. He's a wolf. He's a
Don
wolf.
Carnage, yes, he's a wolf. That's the air pirate. I think him and Shere Khan are in cahoots.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, Don Carnage does Shere Khan's like dirty work for him.
Tailspin for the Sega Genesis is a very fun, nostalgic game for me. I always feel bad though, because on every list I've ever seen of top 10 worst games for the Sega Genesis, Tailspin always ranks in at number 2 or 3.
Well, you know what the fun thing about Tailspin is? First of all, it's considered one of the Saturday morning Sega Genesis games, which it gets lumped in with like Lion King and Aladdin. So like GTFO with the Lion King, because that game is much harder than Tailspin. I beat Tailspin as a child. And Aladdin I also beat. So Aladdin and Tailspin are both platformers, except Tailspin intersects different levels with shoot 'em up levels, where you fly the Seabird, which is their plane that can land on the sea. You have to not lose cargo and avoid getting shot at by pirates. So it's a 2-player. You can have 2 players, and essentially one person flies the plane as Baloo and like shoots bullets or something. Shoots something out. Meanwhile, the second player plays as Kit and is on his air surfer, which is from the show. It's like he has like a little frisbee disc that he flies on and shoots his like slingshot at the bad guys to shoot them down. I just know at the last battle, you fight Don Carnage in his gigantic airship.
Yes, he has a very big
And you have to go through all the different stages, and then it gets shut down. I always liked the shoot 'em up phases more than the platforming. The platforming was fine. Kit had a slingshot in the platforming stages that you can use to shoot the guards, and Baloo had like a paddle for like tabletop tennis, except the ball was on a string and he could like bounce it off of guys. I don't know how they were fighting people, but that's how they get to the platforming levels.
After Tailspin on our list, we have one thing I think was hard for me to pick, and why it ended up on the honorable mentions list is any of the Humongous games. So I'm just saying all of the Humongous games deserve an honorable mention, because they're all fantastic. Putt Putt, Pajama Sam, Freddy Fish, Spy Fox, sure, Fatty Bear, why not? We'll throw him on there. All of the Humongous games are a good time. They're all point-and-click adventures, very simple point-and-click adventures for children. Most of them can be beat in about a minute if you skip the cutscenes, but they are all a good time, I think. Especially like Freddy Fish and Spy Fox, which I think were designed to be a bit more for like, if Putt Putt's for like preschool, Freddy Fish and Spy Fox are for like 2nd or 3rd grade, I think, where they have a little bit more slightly older humor. I wouldn't say like adult humor, but they're a little more serious subject matter, and the puzzles get a little more complicated. If you haven't played any of the games, I would say maybe check out Freddy Fish. I think it holds up probably the best of the entire Humongous bunch.
All right, so as you all have been patiently waiting in this episode, it's time for our list. We're going to start with consoles, and then we're going to go to PC games. If there is another retro game that we don't mention in this list that you think we should have, this is our list. So if you made your own list, maybe it would rank higher. Or maybe we forgot, because we do that a lot too. Because there may be definitely games that we've forgotten, which is why I said if we did this game list again, we may have forgotten. Anyway, to get on with the show, coming in at number 10, Shining Force for the Sega Genesis. Shining Force is a game that came out in 1992, developed by Climax Entertainment and Sonic Software Planning. It's a turn-based RPG where you play as this knight guy and you have to recruit your army and you got to kill the bad guys. There were sequels, which we played, Shining Force 2, which is the one that I think I have the most history of playing with. It is a great game. I really enjoyed watching this game be played when I was a kid growing up, and I think this is a really defining game game that made me really start to appreciate RPGs. And like the first time that I ever saw like slide in battle anime, like when you're fighting bad guys and like the boss comes in, and then like I have clear visions of somebody playing this game and watching the battles and being like, this is really cool.
It's also kind of a weird game. So unlike maybe Fire Emblem, which I think is probably the most easily comparable turn-based role-playing game, Shining Force is not just like medieval RPG, but there's also like mechs at one point that show up in it, and there's like techno magic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it does kind of like mix around, I think, in genres that sometimes you don't really always get with RPG games of this era. I do love the fact that the box art for Shining Force 1 and Shining Force 2, at least for the Mega Drive and Sega Genesis, the European and the NTSC American release, it's very like westernized RPG looking. Like Shining Force 1 looks like the cover looks like a Dungeons and Dragons module. It does not feel like a JRPG game when you're looking at the box art. Like they definitely weren't trying to sell it as a JRPG game, which makes sense. It was the 90s and JRPGs weren't necessarily selling well.
It has the hallmarks of a JRPG where you have town segments and stuff like that, but the combat is a very much tactical RPG versus kind of more traditional turn-based party RPGs. And what I mean by that is that instead of engaging the enemy, like you have a little guy that represents your guy on the world map and you find a random encounter, and then your group of 4 people jump on the screen versus their group of 4 people, and you cycle through the attacks and defenses like a more traditional JRPG. Instead of that, when you go and engage in combat, it goes to an overview of the battle map, and all your people are put out in various parts of the map, and you have to move each one of them to engage the enemy. And you can only engage like one enemy at a time, but you'll have to use kind of like, so you may have an archer, but he can only shoot units that are 2 squares away. So you may want to put like your knight in front of your archer. And then when like the enemy comes, your knight can hit them, and then the archer can shoot an arrow from 2 squares away. But if an enemy engages the archer's got to back off, or he has to engage in like a lower power melee attack. And it's more about positioning your units, which is your party, versus actually controlling like the attack patterns and stuff like that and using the right attacks. Because I believe even in the original Shining Force, your attacks and what you can do as abilities were limited. You could attack, or you could use a special power like heal somebody, but you couldn't be like use a special attack. You would be like just attack, and it's more about a positioning mindset, which actually ties back into my love of a PC game that we'll talk about later on. But yeah, so Shining Force number 10.
One quick thing before we leave Shining Force, Seth, did you know that Shining Force, the first game, is not the first game? The first game in the series is called Shining in the Darkness, and it's a dungeon crawler for the Sega Genesis. I didn't even realize that until just now. I was looking it up.
That's fun. That's a fun little fact.
I'd heard of Shining in the Darkness, did not know they were related.
We'll have to do an episode on all of Shining Force since it's our top 10 list and we haven't done an episode on it.
Number 9, though, will be Rystar.
Or some people may say Restar.
I can say Rystar, so that's what I'm going to say. Rystar is a 1995 Sega game. It was developed and published by Sega, and it's a platformer where you play as a star named Rystar. And it's hard to describe, but it's, I think, a really great platformer from this era. So whereas you have games like Mario or Sonic, Rystar just kind of stands out of the bunch. You know, he's not a quick character. He can't jump on people. He has to like throw his arms forward, like stretchy arms, and then headbutt everyone. There's something about Rystar where when you get a sense of how to control the character, it feels so good to play the character because you'll be able to do tricks even though he's not a quick character. He's not like Sonic. He's not fast. You'll still be able to get through the level quickly by just manipulating manipulating the world around you, grabbing onto things, swinging from things. It just ends up becoming a really fun time. Also, probably has some of the best music on the Sega Genesis. Like, it's up there with like Rocket Knight Adventures or Sonic, but I would say if anyone ever tells you that the Super Nintendo had better music than the Sega, play music from Rystar, because that person will be proven wrong, because Rystar has some of the best music in general from that time period.
It's great. It really fits the theme of the game. It's really poppy and fun. I think you made a really good point with saying that he was slow comparatively to the other platformers of the era. I think that when they were developing Rystar, I think they made a conscious effort to make a game that was a platformer that didn't rely on speed and trying to compete against like Sonic, because they already had Sonic as a fast platformer. So they needed something that was slowed down and a little more nuanced. And I think that's where Rystar came into play. And I also really have the memories of the beginning where Rystar goes, "Play with me." It was a fun game. It holds up. It's fun. It's unique, and it's always interesting trying to learn. It's also a challenge. It is a tough game.
Yeah, it is.
So coming in at number 8 is Mario Kart 64. It's a kart racing game that was released in 1996. Now, Super Mario Kart for the SNES definitely deserves to be stated that it created the genre of kart racing. However, Mario Kart 64 really refined the genre and included the ability to play up to 4 players at once. And it was great. It was a highlight of my childhood, as it was probably also of Zachary's childhood. And you knew if there was Mario Kart 64, some pizza, some soda, you were in for an awesome night. True bonds of friendship were made over Mario Kart 64, and perhaps tested bonds of friendship were made over Mario Kart 64. I actually played Mario Kart 64 with friends a couple years ago, but we were playing Mario Kart 64 and we played an adult version of Mario Kart 64, which is called Drunk Driving.
Mario Kart?
But yes, where you can't win the race unless you finish your drink, and you can either drink to start off completely, or you can drink when you fall off the map. And if you win the race, you have to immediately chug your drink or you're disqualified.
The next game, number 7, is Super Mario World. This game, 1990, made by Nintendo. Personally, I think the reason I wanted to include this in the top 10 is because if you gave me a list of every single 2D Mario game, I would say Super Mario World is probably the best. It feels like it's the most refined out of all the Mario games. So I think like Mario 1 is great. Mario 2, different, but still pretty good. Mario 3, it's like a better version of Mario 1. And then Super Mario World is like a better version of Mario 3. Everything that you liked about Mario 3, it's in here and it's way better. And also you get Yoshi.
Yeah.
It just plays like the way you can chain attacks, the whole, there's like that one sequence in the opening where you have to like hit the Koopa, grab a shell, and then throw the shell into a line of like 10 Koopas and chain to a 1-up. It just like, it's so satisfying every time you play it. It's also one of those games that like I'll like boot up on my Switch and I'll be like, I'm just gonna play a couple of a couple of levels, and then I'll end up like just beating it within like a few hours. Like I'll just go through a sitting of like playing throughout the entire game. I'll be like, what happened? Like, why did I beat this game again, sort of deal. But yeah, that's number 7.
Number 6, Star Fox. Now, when I say Star Fox, the 1993 Nintendo Argonaut Software 3D rail shooter was amazing for the SNES in regards to pushing the platform to its limit. However, I would definitely say for top game for me would be Star Fox 64. Star Fox 64, similar to Mario Kart 64, really brought in like the shooter type of genre to the N64. It has some iconic moments, iconic bosses, and multiple branching pathways. Like, it even has carry through, so like if one of your wingmates gets damaged, they're damaged in the next level. And just really the Star Fox franchise as a whole is a solid franchise and deserves its place on this list, as it were.
So after Star Fox, number 5 is Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI was developed and published by Square, released in 1994. In the United States, it's known as Final Fantasy III, and it's the last mainline Final Fantasy game that came out on a Nintendo console until the games were re-released on like the Switch and I think on the Wii U and stuff like that, and the Game Boy. I think at least Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy V, so Final Fantasy 2 and 3 for everyone keeping track at home. Yeah. I think these games really defined the Super Nintendo in terms of the RPGs that were available. So, like, when I think of role-playing games for home consoles, immediately my first thought is like the opening sequence of the Final Fantasy games on Super Nintendo with the airships and stuff like that. Or it's just some of the classic music that was in those games or the battles that you had to go through. I mean, these are epic games that feel so much larger than they might be in comparison to, say, a modern role-playing game. But to this day, I still think they're incredibly grand games and definitely worth the investment of time into them.
Yeah, for sure. Final Fantasy VI is probably one of my favorite role-playing games of all time, which is why it is ranked relatively high on this list. And Zach obviously agrees with me since I think he put it on this list. But it's just for me, the characters in 6 are really probably my favorite Final Fantasy characters, and I really enjoy how the kind of group works together and how everyone how the story kind of unfolds. And 5 is also that's with Cecil the Dragoon. I had a time period when I was in high school where I played through both 6 and 5. I wanted to play through all of them or something like that. It was some quest that I was on, and I played through 5 and 6, and both of them are wonderful games. Number 4, Super Mario 64. Released in 1996, the 3D platformer by Nintendo. It created the games that are known as Collectathon and gave birth to games similar to Mario 64, such as Spyro and Banjo-Kazooie. Various different other type of platforms that have also spawned off of it. Obviously, billion sequels that have come off of Mario 64, with the latest being Mario Odyssey. And really was a great flagship title to be launched with the N64. I played as much of it as I could have without owning it when I was younger, and have beaten it as an adult. I just love the variety in levels. It really reflects the Mario genre as a whole. I feel like with the additions of the paintings in the castles versus like going through the worlds, it feels like I don't know, I feel like the worlds are more separate in Mario 64 than they were in previous Mario iterations. I felt like with Mario 64, with each of the worlds, instead of being like a placement on the map but being pictures that you jumped into, they had kind of like clear themes that were more, I think, more expanded upon than just like Sun World or like Big People World or something like that. And it was just, I felt like it was a really great iteration of Mario, and obviously we're fans of Mario because it's on this list multiple times.
I think also with Super Mario 64, it is also one of those games that I think personally I will go into and have different experience almost every time I play it. Like, I can play certain levels like Bob-omb Battlefield always the same, but for some reason I'll just notice something different every time I play. It's one of those games that I think is just memorable for a lot of reasons and for a lot of different people. Moving forward, number 3 is GoldenEye 007. GoldenEye 007 came out in 1997. It was developed by Rare. It's a first-person shooter based on the movie of the same name. And it is just the like absolute quintessential party game. Like, you know, Mario Kart 64 is good, Mario Party is good. GoldenEye 007 is the game to play when you have a group of friends over and you just want to goof around and play something fun that everyone can enjoy. GoldenEye 007 is the go-to. I think my favorite thing with GoldenEye 007 is just the wide variety of modes you can play, be it slappers only, license to kill, proxies, there's all different game variants, ways that you can play the game, all different maps, cheats that you can enable. It's just an experience you don't get with modern shooters these days. I feel like pretty much since, not not to sound like an old man, but not pretty much since Call of Duty became the standard and or Halo became the standard, you just don't get the variety, in my opinion, that you get with a GoldenEye 007.
I think that's also plays into a fact that Call of Duty and Halo are trying to be something different. They're trying to be creating a balanced esport environment. They're trying to make sure that the graphics are the highest fidelity as they can. And I think they're trying to be an experience that's more gamified. Call of Duty makes it so that you need to play the next season. There's objectives for you to do, and GoldenEye wasn't trying to do anything like that. GoldenEye wasn't trying to be balanced. GoldenEye wasn't trying to be anything more than just a multiplayer component of this single player game of going through the movie, as it were. But Rare just went above and beyond with the development of this game to where this game could have been a bad movie tie-in that nobody liked, like other 007 games.
Yes, yeah.
where it's just a bad movie tie-in and the game is mediocre at best. In a vacuum, is GoldenEye 007 the best first-person shooter around? No. But during the late 90s, was it the best party game around? Probably. And it was fun. At the end of the day, it's still fun.
Yeah.
It's funny. The people look funny in it. The graphics are great. And some of the graphics are because of the limitations of the console, but honestly, they, even Jaws and Objob, they just look funny, especially when they're polygonal. All right. Number 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Developed in 1992 by Sega. It's the game that Zach learned to hold a game controller with. And to be fair, I did as well. We both really played a lot of Sonic 2. I mean, we both beat the game. I think Zach's probably beaten the game in the last few months.
Yeah.
It's a fast platformer where it's frantic kind of gameplay and got that frenetic energy is the kind of game, and you're playing as a blue hedgehog. We actually just did an entire lore episode diving into the lore of Sonic. If you want to check that out, it's episode 107, and it's great. I'm sure Zach can speak a little bit on it as well.
If you had to tell me there was only one Sonic game that I could play for the rest of my life, it would be Sonic 2. It is a game that I have never been bored of, and I've always loved playing. And I know for a fact I probably couldn't speed run it the way some experts can, but that doesn't matter for me. It's just playing Sonic 2 is just a good time, and a time that I always have that I find enjoyable. It's also a game that's very memorable to me for a lot of reasons. I mean, it is one of probably the first console games that I ended up ever playing, which kind of leaves a special place in my heart, to the point where I've started to collect versions of Sonic 2 that have been released, including the recently given gift from my dear brother of the Sonic 2 Japanese release, which was nice to receive for Christmas, and it looks beautiful on my shelf. There's something about Sonic 2 that I think is different from Sonic 1, that's different than Sonic 3, and that it just pulls me into it every single time that I see it.
Right. It was also the pack-in for one of the versions of the Sega Genesis.
Yeah, it was I think the pack-in for the Model 2.
Model 2, which was the first model that we had. Because we had the Model 2, then we got the Model 3, then we had the Model 1.
I'm pretty sure the copy that I have boxed, one of the copies I have boxed, is the not for resale copy that was bundled with
it was the pack-in one.
Yeah. Finally, number 1 is Ocarina of Time. 1998, developed by Nintendo. And we talked about this a lot in episode 91, and we followed it up in episode 92 with our Majora's Mask episode. But personally, I think Ocarina of Time is one of, if not the best video games of all time. Period. It is a massive adventure that just puts you through so many different challenges and gives you so much replayability and is such a memorable cinematic experience every time you play it. From the moment you start the game and you get the intro about the 3 goddesses and how the energy of the Triforce exists, to the introduction of Link, where you see the fairy flying first person through the Kokiri Valkyrie village and then meeting Link. And then you just like right off the bat, you get full control of this character. You can explore this world. You go headfirst into your first dungeon. And then the moment you're out of the Lost Woods, it is just this massive world that you can tackle any direction you want. And yeah, there is like you are supposed to, it's more of a linear game that I think I make it feel like. But Nintendo, I think, made the smart decision by keeping the game linear but making it feel open so that it allowed you to really play the game at your pace. And I think that is something that a lot of Zelda games thankfully kept, and they got that from Ocarina of Time. But I think Ocarina of Time is definitely the one that we can thank for that, because I think it really did set the standard for modern open world games in general.
It's not as open world as the original Zelda, which is also a great game, or as open world as Z2, which is also a game. Ocarina of Time is a game that I enjoyed so much that I had it permanently installed on a jump drive in the early 2000s, and I would take it with me and play it on random computers in computer labs in the university and stuff like that.
And I think like Mario 64, I think like I mentioned, Ocarina of Time is also one of those games that every single time I play it, I notice something new that I haven't noticed before, or I see something that I appreciate differently than maybe the last time I played the game. As I've gotten older, I've come to kind of learn a bit more about the game making process and to understand how they are able to do certain things to make the game look the way it does. I think it's a massive achievement for Nintendo, and I definitely think it's a game that deserves the number one spot. But we're not done at all, because we have 10 more games we have to go through, and that is the 10 games for the PC.
Right.
Starting off, number 10, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. It's a 2004 action RPG developed by Troika and published by Activision for Microsoft Windows. And Seth, I haven't played a lot of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, so you're going to have to take it away on this one.
This is actually the youngest game on our list, I just want you to know. And Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines is a role-playing game that I just felt was so well done and so under-recognized as a well-done game that I just needed to include it. I needed to put it on our list. I need to talk about it. It's a great game. Troika knocked it out of the park with this game. It is still playable, still relevant today, and opens up a world of a whole role-playing universe that not many people are aware of. Because if I say Dungeons and Dragons, today's day and age, you'll know what I'm talking about. D&D is a well-known role-playing game franchise. Vampire the Masquerade's a game that was developed by White Wolf and is now owned by Paradox Studios. Be that as it may, Vampire the Masquerade is part of a universe that was created where vampires, werewolves, wraiths, and all these creatures exist. There's rules so you can play them, and they all have their own kind of horror aspect, and it's a personal horror game. And I think those are the best stories, especially in a role-playing sense, where the game, you're not necessarily the good guy, and you're not necessarily the bad guy either, but there is something wrong with you, and you need to face that. And there's this aspect of this personal horror, and you go through and you uncover these aspects. And this game in particular has one of the scariest and most well done maps, period. It is a ghost map, and you have to navigate through a haunted hotel. And I would love to be in Zachary's position and be able to play through this ghost map blind and not have played it a million times to know where all the jump scares are. It's great. And it's put into other different types of gameplay. So it's not all like jump scares and horror. It's just a horror section, like a ghost section, and it's done great. So Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, 100% top 10. Number 10 though. Number 9 is going to be The Longest Journey, developed in 2000 by Funcom. It's a point and click adventure game which really features such an epic and kind of, I wouldn't say it is kind of an outlandish story where you play as a character known as April Ryan, and you are able to shift between these different worlds. And throughout the game, you can go through this like fantasy world and this like dystopia future world. As April, you're trying to balance this like these two worlds. One's like overly dependent on technology, the other one's all on fantasy, and you're trying to balance them back together. And it is just one of those adventure games that if somebody says to me, hey Seth, you have played a lot of adventure games in your life, what adventure game would you want me to play to get me to like adventure games? I would say The Longest Journey, followed by Gabriel Knight. But Gabriel Knight's a very niche love. But Longest Journey can be appreciated by everybody.
Well, number 8 is Baldur's Gate 2. Baldur's Gate 2 was developed in 2000 by Black Isle. It's a computer role-playing game in isometric view with 6 controllable party members with real-time with pause action. And it's this sweeping, epic story. So Baldur's Gate 2, to use the term again, these are massive games. These are games that are massive role-playing games that to some might seem daunting, but I think if people give them a chance, they'll be able to experience something great. And that's at least been my experience when I've played Baldur's Gate.
So the thing with Baldur's Gate 2, and the reason why Baldur's Gate 2 is here versus Baldur's Gate 1, is actually back to the Ocarina of Time conversation where we talk about this open world feeling linear game. Baldur's Gate 2 has that versus Baldur's Gate 1 is a little more open world than Baldur's Gate 2. Baldur's Gate 1 says, hey, there's some problems with the mines, maybe go check it out. And you can go pretty much do whatever you want. The second you're able to control your character, you can do whatever you want. Having recently beat the original, comparatively to the second one is a masterpiece. The second one gives you directions, you have clear objectives, and you have a sense of urgency. So not only do you have to go and do this particular task, you have to do it because you have to rescue someone. And you have to raise money. And in order to raise money, you have to do these big quests. And you have to do these quests quickly because you don't know what's going to happen to the person you need to rescue. And you kind of unfold this onion of a story. And the Baldur's Gate series really, if you take it and look at it as one giant picture, it's this arc of this normal person ascending up through pretty much godhood and going and adventuring with this person all the way. Baldur's Gate 2 really tells a story within itself of a brother and a sister who are very loyal to each other and the importance of family and the reason why family exists. And that's why Baldur's Gate 2 is here. Within this kind of tier of honorable mentions, there's Planescape Torment, the Icewind Dale series, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
All really great RPGs by Black Isle. Number 7, Half-Life. 1998 first-person shooter developed by Valve and originally published by Sierra Studios. You play as Gordon Freeman and you fight aliens?
Yes.
Also, of this ranking, I would also like to include Team Fortress Counter-Strike and all the mods that Half-Life spawned.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for me, one of the reasons why Half-Life deserves a spot on this list, though, is because what it did to the first-person shooter genre. To give you a little idea of first-person shooters before Half-Life, they were games like Doom and Quake. And we're going to talk about one of those games coming up, but I'm not going to tell you which one. And those are fine games. Doom and Quake are great games. In fact, there's a reason why one of them is going to be coming up. But I think what Half-Life did was it took a genre that was primarily defined as something that was kind of bombastic and over the top and said, let's tell a story. And I think that's something that Half-Life does really well because it tells the story completely from a first person perspective. From the moment the game begins to the moment the game ends, you always are in complete control of Gordon Freeman, apart from one segment where you get knocked unconscious. But even then, you are still in Gordon Freeman's perspective. So the game has pretty much no cutscenes that are like traditional cutscenes you would get from other first-person shooters or other games in general. So even the opening segment where Gordon Freeman is going to work is a playable segment of you riding the tram and then getting off the tram, walking to your like suit that you have to wear, and then going down to the test chamber before the accident happens. And I think the first 20 minutes of Half-Life, something that has to be played to be properly understood, because the way Valve builds the world that you're entering, I think, is something that it's just something that I think modern video games owe a lot to Half-Life for. The fact that, you know, you enter this facility that you know nothing about besides what you can put together just from visual cues, and all of the characters walking around you all have their own personalities. They all have their own quips. There's little details that you see, like jokes written on chalkboards and stuff like that. It's all those fine details that I think that might seem like something that you would get in any modern shooter these days, but it came from Half-Life. That's the cold hard fact, is that Half-Life is the reason we have those type of games. We also don't want to exclude the multiple mods that Half-Life gave birth to. But moving forward, our next game, number 6, is Civilization 2, 1996 turn-based strategy game, and it's the second game in the Civilization series. This game was published and developed by Microprose, and currently Civilization is on its 6th iteration, so there have been 6 games in the Civilization series, but this is the second one we're going to focus on. I think Civilization 2 is a game that is great, but I think Seth has more to say on the matter.
Yeah, I love this game. This game is my beginning of my 4X love. So 4X is, we've used this term before to describe like Crusader Kings, and Total War can be a little bit of a 4X. So 4X stands for explore, expand, exploit, exterminate. That's what you do in these type of games. And Civ 2 was my first interaction with it. We had the jewel case version of Civ 2, and I don't know where we got it from. I just loved it. It's like the one more turn type of games where you're just like, I gotta play one more turn. And like the first time I was playing, at some point in time I had nuclear weapons, and everyone was mad at me for having nuclear weapons. And so they would send me emissaries, and little pop-up messages would be like, oh, listen, I'm really disappointed with you that you have nuclear weapons. And I would say, I'm sorry. And then I would bomb them with my nuclear weapons. but nuclear weapons in Civ 2 only eliminated half the population of a city, and then it would eliminate them half again and half again and half again, and it would just keep eliminating half of them, but it would never outright destroy them. So you could bomb them with like 30 nuclear weapons, but they would always be there, and they'd always be mad that you have them.
Yeah.
It was I love all iterations of the Civ series. I think it's a great game. It's one of those games where if you have a free day and you have a friend that has a similar 4X love, then you can just sit down and you can just play a long game of Civilization to possibly end in frustration where you get wiped out. But I'm not very good at the Civ games, but I definitely Civ 2. I just want to mention that the Civ 2 box art is just so great. It just shows like this ship along with some like Carthaginian elephants. You got the pyramids in the background. You've got like the Statue of Liberty. You have some modern civilization in sepia tone in the back, and it's just like a really kind of like an encapsulation of the game in just one image. And when I see that, I'm just like, that's the Civ that I grew up playing. That's my Civ. Everyone's got their own Civ. Civ 2's mine. Number 5, Doom, with a nod to Chex Quest.
Yes.
Doom was developed in 1993. It's a first-person shooter. You play as Doom Guy, and you shoot demons on Mars.
It's not the game that created first-person shooters, but it's the game that it created first-person shooters. I mean, it's not the first, but it is the first. I mean, like Wolfenstein 3D came before it, but Doom is I think the game that really set us on a trend for what first-person shooters would become. And I think the thing about Doom is that it is a fun game. And I don't mean that lightly. I like, you can load up Doom and just have a blast every time you play it. Pun completely intended. Though I do want to say Chex Quest probably has the closer place in my heart. And while I would have put Chex Quest down for number 5, I mean, we wouldn't have Chex Quest without Doom. And Chex Quest is the game that means a bit more to me. Doom is the game that gave us Chex Quest. And for that, I can never be mad at Doom because they gave us Chex Quest. But number 4, though, is Return of the Phantom, with a nod toward Dragon Sphere and Rex Nebular in the Cosmic Genderbender. Return of the Phantom came out in 1993. It's a Microprose game, and all 3 of these games are really Microprose's answer to the LucasArts / Sierra Online adventure games that were dominating the gaming market at the time. Microprose stepped in and were like, hey, we want a piece of that adventure game pie. So they created a engine, and they made 3 games in this engine. And those games were Rex Nebular, Return of the Phantom, and Dragon Sphere, in that order.
Right. I think they get better in quality as they age. So, like,
yes,
Rex Nebular was a good game. Return of the Phantom was a better game, and Dragon Sphere was the best game.
I just think Return of the Phantom is a game that is hilarious. I just laugh every time I play that game.
I think the reason that Return of the Phantom is the best of the 3 is because Dragon Sphere is actually a pretty serious game. And Zach and I have not played a lot of Rex Nebular, so we don't have as much nostalgia to Rex Nebular. And Dragon Sphere is more of a serious game. Return of the Phantom is a game that's trying to be serious, but is really, really silly, especially because there's like the voice work is a little over the top. And there's like things that just when I play the game where I'm playing the game and then all of a sudden I'm in the backstage and the backstage manager is like sniffing like he's on cocaine.
Oh yeah.
It's just some really silly voice work. And I think that's probably the reason why Return of the Phantom is our number 1, because it's a silly game and also tells the story of the Phantom of the Opera, which is one of my favorite musicals. Number 3 is Star Wars Dark Forces, a 1995 first-person shooter developed and published by LucasArts, and you play as Kyle Katarn, who's a mercenary who eventually learns how to use the Force and a lightsaber, and the game is great. It is a wonderful first-person shooter. It's mission-based and really introduced like jumping mechanics to me and kind of gave me the feeling that I wasn't just a floating gun on one level playing field type of deal. Like I was actually embodying a person. Like I had like a 3D avatar. And that's kind of like how that game felt to me. The Dark Forces and all the sequels obviously going into like Jedi Outcast and Jedi Academy just really were fun. They're good Star Wars games. They're a great action. I think Jedi Outcast 2 was probably one of my favorite Star Wars action games and has the voice talents of Billy D. Williams in them. So what more can you ask for?
Out of all the Dark Forces games, I think Jedi Outcast is
the best.
It's great. And I think one of the reasons it's so great, it's the first and to this day probably the only game that I've played that knows how to do lightsaber combat in a way that feels the most satisfying. Just because whenever you use a lightsaber in that game, it just feels like you're using a lightsaber. If you walk too close to the wall with the lightsaber ignited, it leaves a line cutting into the wall.
It kills people if you walk too close, I'm pretty sure. I think my favorite moment in Jedi Outcast was the Cloud City mission. You're starting to get your force powers unlocked, and you enter into a room and there's like 6 or 7 stormtroopers. And I just remember going to that room and activating force speed and just lightsabering them all. And by the time my force speed ran out and time resumed, they all just dropped at the same exact time.
Yeah.
And it was just
it's like moments like that.
Felt great.
It's or like when you develop full force choke, You can like lift people up and throw them around.
And just toss.
You just get such a sense of force power in that game that like even like modern like Jedi Fallen Order, like I don't get that feeling when I play Jedi Fallen Order, which is unfortunate because I think Jedi Fallen Order is a great game, but I think Jedi Outcast did it better. Now, number 2 is XCOM UFO Unknown. 1994, developed by Mythos Games and Microprose. It's a science fiction strategy video game where you play as people who have to kill aliens, and most of the time you're getting killed by those aliens.
XCOM is a very fun but difficult strategy game. And when you are successful in XCOM, you feel smart. It was also very scary as a child playing XCOM. But UFO Defense, Terror from the Deep, these games they rate so high because they were really an integral part of my childhood. And I really like strategy games because of playing these games. I was never very good at them. I was good enough so I could play them for a while, but they're tough games to play. Finally, number 1 is Warcraft. With also mention to StarCraft. Warcraft was originally released in 1994. It's a real-time strategy game where you play as humans or orcs. 95 was Warcraft 2. 96 was the X-Pact Warcraft 2. And 98 was StarCraft. I love all of them. Warcraft 1 is still amazing. I was talking to my father-in-law at Christmas about Warcraft 1 and about the situation that I ended up in where I was fighting the computer and I mined 3 different mines and mined 32,000 gold, which I thought was a lot, and produced somewhere around the neighborhood of like, I think I produced somewhere around 30 something units. A lot of knights. I made a lot of knights. That's where all my money went, into dead knights. Maybe more. I don't know. Regardless, the computer ended up mining 96,000 gold from one mine.
Which, yeah, is definitely not possible to do for a human character to do.
I thought I mined a lot with 32, and that was draining 3 mines.
Yeah, it is.
Yet somehow the computer found one that had 96,000 gold, and that's okay. The computer's gonna cheat in Warcraft.
Yes. The computer always cheats in Warcraft. I love all the Warcraft games. I especially love Warcraft 2 because I mentioned this in a previous episode, but I think Warcraft 2 has a lot of quality of life improvements that Warcraft 1 neglected. Or just they weren't like a thing yet because Warcraft 1 is such an early real-time strategy game. Not to say that there aren't ways to mod Warcraft 1 to add some quality of life improvements, but Warcraft 2 had them off the bat. So I give them a little extra star for that. But yeah, Warcraft, I think Warcraft is well deserved of number 1 title.
I really like that the voices are all the same for the people in Warcraft 1. My liege, my lord, my lord, my liege, my lord, my lord.
Yes, my lord.
It's that some of the buildings have their own little sound effects, but some of them are just a click.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the end of our longer episode of our countdowns. We do have our Byway Pass segment, and then we're going to end this. Now, the Byway Pass. I'm so excited. I'm going to go first, though. All right, Zach. This game will be out in 2022.
Okay.
And it's a dark menace is consuming the Old West. You can play it solo or co-op, and it's a visceral, explosive game. It's a visceral, explosive game where you have to fight against bloodthirsty where you fight against bloodthirsty monstrosities.
Oh, what game is this?
This game is Evil West.
We're going to take a short break as Zach does some research. And we're back. So Evil West, Flying Wild Hog is the developer, being published by Focus Home Interactive, coming out hopefully in 2022. That's what they say. So yeah, this looks to be like it's going to be a really cool game. Personally, I am very interested in it. I am most interested to see how the co-op plays out. So I'm going to put this down as a wait, but this wait is only because I want to see if anyone else might be interested in owning this game and playing it with me, because I would like to really play it in co-op. I prefer most games I like playing in co-op if they have the option. So yeah, wait, just but the caveat that I'm going to be asking my friends if they're interested in the game as well. Now, Seth, are you ready for your game?
I am.
So this game, Seth, is it's a role-playing game. It has some roguelike elements. In the game, you can customize your teammates' AI, like their behavior, so that your battles go a certain way when you play this game. It is very combat-centric. Are you interested?
Sure.
This game is called Dual Corp. It is due out Q1 2022.
We'll be back after this short break. And we're back. This is an interesting game. I like the aesthetics. I am usually not the biggest roguelike fan, but I think I'm actually going to put this down as a wait and look to see how it comes along. But yeah, it looks kind of interesting.
All right.
All right.
Let's roll us out. So thank you, everyone, for listening this far, and thank you for listening to this year of Classic Gaming Brothers. If you liked this episode, if you think that we missed any games, if you want to complain about the games we picked, you can email us at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com, or you can contact us through our website, www.classicgamingbrothers.com. You can also reach out to us via social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and Twitter. Our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch are Classic Gaming Brothers. Our Twitter is CG Brothers Pod. And as always, you can find us on all the various podcasting applications. Be sure to like and rate us if you feel so inclined. We'd appreciate it. But thank you, everyone, for listening. And we hope you like what's coming in 2022. Besides that, though, Seth, is there anything I'm forgetting?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
And now for a year of celebrity deathmatch inside jokes.